over here. And then the psalmist brings us back to reality. Tremble before him. He is mighty. He is strong. He is awesome. Remember who he is. But he's your God, your creator, your fearsome warrior. Yes, he's daddy. But he's also a creator. So tell all the nations. What? Well, Psalmist tells us that the Lord reigns, that the world stands firm, that the world cannot be shaken, but God's going to come and judge it fairly. Good word for the nations to know, isn't it? Nations who act as though they have impunity to all things that are going on. I can do whatever I want because I'm in power. And I can kind of see God going, excuse me. Let me remind you who's ultimately in power. God reigns. World stands firm. It will not be shaken. You can't change it one iota, and I am coming to judge. So be on your best behavior. What else does he tell us? Well, let the heavens be glad. Let the earth rejoice. Let the sea and everything in it shout with praise. Okay, and this is where always we get into trouble with those who say that everything in Scripture is literal. Well, kind of. It's literal poetry. There's literal history. There's literal narrative. There's literal in a lot of senses. This is very poetic. And it says that the earth will rejoice. Well, who? Well, all things on earth will rejoice. You, me, the nations, the people, the animals will rejoice that God's in control. Let the sea and everything in it shout his praise. Let the fields and the crops burst out with joy. In other words, just look out. And when you see this marvelous setting, this pastoral view, know that that's their way of saying God is in control. We used to make this trip back from Edmonton to Michigan, usually about 2 or 3 times a year. I can tell you exactly how long it takes to get there going via Chicago. It takes 33 hours, drive time. But along the way, we got to see some very marvelous things. Now, I don't know, how many of you have gone through Iowa? Nebraska? Montana? Yeah, fun? No, yeah. So have I. When we take the southern route, we'd go through that way. But when we take the northern route through Canada, we would go through Saskatchewan and Manitoba and Alberta. And along the way, similar to its southern cousin, they would see all of these fields planted. It was great as you get toward the end of the summer and you'd see all of the crops that had been up and blooming. Now, we sing in our national anthem of waves of grain, you know, watching the grain just kind of blow in the wind, and it's beautiful. Imagine, if you will, canola. How many of you have ever seen canola? One. Neil, you don't count, you're from there. Canola, when it grows, it starts, and it never gets very tall. It's almost a weed. Now, if you notice when you go to the grocery store, if you want healthy oil to cook with or anything, now much of the time it's canola oil. It's because they take the seed of that and they cook it down and they make it into the oil. And at just the right time of the summer, its flowers come out. And the flowers, and I'm looking around, I don't even see anything close to it. They are bright yellow. maybe the yellow that's in my highlighter. And so you have acres and acres, kilometer after kilometer, we're in Canada, of yellow canola. And next to that would be purple flax. And next to that would be the tan wheat. And it would be like an intricate quilt. That's not praise. That's not joy. That was a marvelous sight to see. Now, I have to admit that in my sinful nature, after about the 12th or 13th or 14th time making that trip, it wasn't as exciting as the first few. But their joy was no less. Let the fields and their crops burst out with joy. Let the trees of the forest rustle with praise. Or trees of the fields clap their hands. They were doing that on my house last night. I heard them. As the storm came rumbling through, I heard the trees on the house clapping to keep me awake. The praise which this man felt was an extension of the praise in our creation that has existed since the beginning of time. His joy and excitement welled up within him to the point where he could not tell. He had to tell. It wasn't possible for him to keep the secret. It's wrong, right? Jesus must not have known that. Oh, I think he knew. Keep the praise. Keep the silence to yourself. Yeah, right. I have seen you grandparents when you know that the grandchild has just been born, keeping that secret. You don't. When the news is so good that you can't keep the news to yourself, you have to share it. That's the gospel. That's the good news. That's what all of this is about. Having such a relationship with God that we have this excitement building up within us that we can't keep to ourselves. It's not about a bunch of head knowledge. It's not even about emotional knowledge. It's about being so in love with someone that you can't help but tell everybody about it. I remember when I asked Nancy to marry me. There wasn't a person I met for a week and a half that didn't know that. And didn't know the entire story. And didn't know that I'd taken her to Ottawa Beach on Lake Michigan and proposed. And knew all of the details. Because I had said the story over and over and over and over and over again. And it never lost its excitement. Why? Because she said yes. There wasn't a chance in the world I was going to keep that to myself. It was good news. So what's the problem with Christians? We don't often go out and tell people about all the good things that God is doing. Is it because we don't see them? I hope not. Because they are the 13th or 14th or 15th journey down that road and they've lost their luster? I hope not either. We need to regain the excitement of our first love, Scripture says. Knowing what it is that God has done for us from the very beginning. We asked for His blessing and we were healed. We got so much more than what we asked for. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to look at what it means to live as a believer in Jesus Christ. Is the Heidelberg Scripture? No, it's not. Scripture's here. Heidelberg's here. But the Heidelberg does neat things